Hello, fellow Equatorians. This is Sabata with the Equatoria Advocacy Foundation. I'm coming very quickly to explain how formation of the Equatoria Regional Council, which is a basis for creating or setting up an administration for the Equatorians, could lead to the third reason for which the initiative is tailored to accomplish, which is complete prerequisite that require for Equatoria to qualify for secession in the event Equatorians decide to secede. Okay, because if you guys see the purpose for creating this council, and the council is actually basis for setting up an administration for the Equatorians. It is tailored to accomplish the following. It's supposed to unify Equatorians under a single leadership structure, supposed to help advocate interests of Equatorians or Equatoria Regional Bloc as a whole. And the third is it completes prerequisite that is required for Equatoria to qualify for secession in the event Equatorians decide to secede. So I've come to explain, to connect how this would complete prerequisite that is required for Equatoria to qualify for secession in the event Equatorians choose to secede. Now, when you look at what's called Montevideo Convention criteria for statehood, Montevideo is the capital of Uruguay. So in 1933, as you can see here, head of states represented states in Montevideo at a convention resolved that in order for a state to be recognized as a state, it must fulfill or satisfy certain requirements. And the first is there should be a permanent population, there should be a defined territory, and there should be a government. And then the fourth is the capacity to enter into relations and with other states. Now, when you look at the Equatorians do have a population of about 3.2 million. That's based on census of 2010. Now, when you look at Equatoria is defined in a territory. You know, the British in 1956, when they gave the independence, Equatoria has a territory. Bahar al-Ghazal also has a territory. Upper Nile also has a territory. Now, when you look at, leave alone the third, when you look at the fourth, the capacity to enter into relations with other states. Yes, Equatoria do have resources. Okay, this is supposed to be okay. I think the guy who indicated this must have made a very negligently made a mistake. He's supposed to say the capacity to enter into relations with other states. It's not capacity to enter into. So anyways, it must be an error that the guy has done. Now, when you look at the third requirement here, which is government, this is what Equatoria lacks. So Equatoria has all this, all right? If Equatoria is going to be recognized down the road, you know, when Equatoria goes out to lobby or to advocate for secession, they should qualify. They should fulfill all these requirements. But right now, Equatoria lacks this, lacks government. So creation of what's called a council is actually basis for setting up administration. So it's actually basis of creating a government. That is why I refer to it as quasi-administrative structure, Because what is a government? Government is those institutional structures that govern the nation. So it's really very important that the Equatorians support the idea of setting up a state, a council, for the basis of setting up an administration for the Equatorians. Not only because of this particular reason, that is the secession, but it also unifies the Equatorians under one or single leadership. It brings about solidarity, and eventually the interest of Equatorians would eventually be addressed under one or under a single leadership structure. Now, when you guys look at this, excuse me, when you guys look at the principles of self-determination, okay, when you guys look at the principles of self-determination here, it's actually a legal right of people to decide their own destiny in the international order. Self-determination is a core principle of international law, arising from customary law, but also recognized as a general principle of law, and enshrined in a number of international treaties or agreements. And when you look down here, it's basically the same concept being explained. Now, for as much as it appears or it sounds so simple, it's just like, oh, okay, it's the right of a group of people to go for what is called self-determination and decide on their destiny. It appears very simple, but then the politics of it is kind of complicated. All right, because if a nation chooses to secede, a nation actually means a collection of individuals put together who share common characteristics. Okay, probably language, culture, such kind of things. So with that being said, then that means when you put the tribes of Equatoria together, can form the nation of Equatoria. Or if you choose to call these tribes as nations in themselves, that could also be correct. But it is always expected that nations should look like kind of huge in number, even though there is no criteria for how much will constitute a nation. Okay, but so long as a group of people who share common characteristics got to be reasonable enough. I guess that's why sometimes academicians tend to distinguish tribes and nations. But for as much as it appears from these principles here that when a nation decides to opt out a state here is the institutionalized structural governing units. So if a group of people, for example Equatorians, decide to opt out of authority of the SPLM regime, then there will eventually, there is always a process. If you ask yourself how a nation gets to a point of getting out of the authority of a particular state, it's always through a process, and it finishes with what is called voting. And this voting is actually done in a set platform, which is called a referendum. All right, where the nation that wants to come out would be given a chance to have each person have a say whether really they want to secede or not. And this the entire process is called a referendum, or an exercise of right to self-determine your future, you see. So it appears, or it sounds easy, but the politics of it is kind of complicated. And the politics of it is complicated because it requires that the state that the nation wants to opt out of must cooperate with the process. For example, if the Equatorians choose to exercise their rights for self-determination, Kir will have to cooperate, and that makes the politics of the whole principle complicated, because it will go against the interest of Kir, you see, or it will go against the interest of those who do not want Equatorians to secede. And it becomes complicated. Kir might decide to even use the security apparatus against, if not all Equatorians, then against those who are championing the exercise of rights to self-determined future. That is why it makes the politics of it complicated, and it brings in what is called advocacy, the importance of advocacy or lobbying, because now it will then mean that the nation that is deciding to opt out from the administration of the state of Kir, for example, or of the SPLM, for example, will have to lobby international community very carefully, especially the very strong nation states like the United States of America and British, you know. It will demand that these strong nation states would be lobbied very, very carefully, so that then it will be these strong nation states to approach Kir and set forth certain terms or conditions ahead of time, that okay, this group of people are going to exercise their self-determination practice, and we do not want you to interrupt the process. All right, and the stronger powers will kind of talk with the head of state to cooperate. All right, not to use security apparatus, because it's the right of the people. But in order for the strong nation state like US and British to basically do that, the lobbyist or the advocacy organizations should be really good, you know, at convincing these countries that their economic progress will lie on an independent Equatoria, you see. And if you give them the impression that once Equatoria secedes, they will do business with Equatoria and they would really thrive economically, then they may decide to help in this. But the bottom line is, you know, as I've explained earlier, that I'm coming here to basically explain how creation of the quasi-administrative unit or quasi-administrative state of the Equatoria would qualify Equatoria for secession. This is because it constitutes the third requirement here, okay? And this is why it's very important to create a state of the Equatoria. It's very important to set administration for the people of Equatoria. So for that reason, I'm asking the Equatorians to focus and to support the idea of going to Phoenix and setting up an administration for the Equatorians. It's very important, not only for this purpose, but also for unity and representation of the interests of Equatorians as a regional bloc. Thank you very much. I will come again to discuss some other matters in the near future. God bless you.